Most murder cases begin with chaos. A broken window, a desperate struggle, a witness who heard screams in the middle of the night. But this case was different. It began with silence. The kind of silence that makes experienced detectives uneasy. Because sometimes, the most terrifying crime scene is the one that looks completely ordinary. On a quiet morning, emergency responders arrived after receiving a distress call from a residence that had shown no signs of trouble just hours earlier. Neighbors described the area as peaceful. Nothing unusual had been seen or heard during the night. Yet inside, they discovered a scene that would leave investigators searching for answers for years. The victim had been murdered. There were no obvious signs of forced entry. The doors were locked. The windows were intact. Nothing appeared to be stolen. Expensive electronics remained untouched. Jewelry was still in place. Even cash had been left behind. Whoever committed this crime hadn't come to rob the victim. They had come for one reason, and one reason alone: to kill. Police immediately sealed off the property, turning it into a crime scene. Every room was photographed from every angle. Fingerprint specialists dusted every surface they could reach. Forensic experts collected fibers, hairs, footprints, and microscopic traces that most people would never notice. Hours passed, then an entire day. Still, investigators found almost nothing that could identify a suspect. No clear fingerprints, no murder weapon, no surveillance footage showing who entered or left. It was as if the killer had carefully erased every trace of their presence before disappearing into the night. Detectives turned their attention to the victim's life. Who were they? Did they have enemies? Were they involved in financial disputes? Had they recently argued with anyone? Friends and family painted the same picture. The victim was well-liked, hardworking, quiet. There were no known threats, no public feuds, no obvious reason why anyone would want them dead. As investigators reconstructed the victim's final 24 hours, every minute became important. Phone records were examined. Bank transactions were reviewed. Security cameras from nearby streets were collected. Witnesses were interviewed repeatedly. At first, several people seemed suspicious. One acquaintance gave inconsistent statements. Another had no convincing explanation for where they had been that evening. A third had argued with the victim weeks before the murder. Each lead looked promising, but one after another, every theory collapsed. Alibis were verified. Evidence failed to support the suspicions. The investigation returned to where it had started. Nowhere. Weeks turned into months. The investigation team filled entire walls with photographs, maps, timelines, and handwritten notes. Red strings connected people, places, and possible motives. Every detective hoped one missing connection would finally reveal the killer. But every new meeting ended the same way. No suspect, no motive, no breakthrough. News outlets began calling it an impossible murder. The public wondered whether the killer had committed the perfect crime. Pressure on the investigators grew with every passing day. Some officers believed the case would eventually go cold. Others quietly accepted that they might never solve it. But one detective refused to let go. Something about the crime scene didn't make sense. The detective couldn't explain why, but there was a persistent feeling that everyone had overlooked something incredibly small. Not a dramatic clue, not a hidden confession. Just one tiny detail. A detail buried among hundreds of photographs, forensic reports, and witness statements. At the time, no one realized that this insignificant piece of evidence would eventually expose the killer. And when the detective decided to examine every document from the very beginning, the impossible case finally began to change. Coming up next, the detective reopened every file, every photograph, and every piece of forgotten evidence. Hidden within thousands of pages was a clue so small that almost everyone had ignored it, but it was about to point directly toward the person responsible.